Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the podcast. I'm excited to be here with you again this week. And anyone watching the video, if you really paid attention, could notice that I'm wearing the same outfit as I was wearing when I recorded last week's episode. And that's because I recorded it 20 minutes ago. So a little peek behind the curtain. Sometimes I record more than one podcast episode at a time. I think pretty much everybody who has a podcast does that sometimes. And actually it's a fun sidebar, but when I first started my podcast, somebody gave me the advice of like, just record like 10 episodes in a day and just change your hair and your shirt and your jewelry or whatever between episodes. And I'm like, I did it for a while. And then I was just like, why do I care if people know I recorded more than one episode in a day? It's okay. I don't think that reflects poorly on me or anything. So anyway, here I am wearing the same plaid flannel I was wearing 20 minutes ago. The cat's out of the bag, everybody. And that's not even my confession for this week. So there you go. You're getting a double whammy today. An off the cuff confession before my real confession. So what I want to talk about this week is sibling drama. I really don't usually say sibling rivalry, even though rivalry might be a part of the dynamics between your kids if you have more than one kiddo. But I will often say sibling drama or sibling dynamics. And I gotta say, the only time I work with somebody and we don't talk about this is if they have an only child. And even then, it's like 50-50 because they probably have like a cousin they're super close with or a friend that's practically turned into their brother or something like that. So, this dynamic between like super close children is so prevalent. And I really try to bring this attitude toward my parenting and my practice helping parents of, if something is so universal, if something is this universal, it must be because like it's supposed to happen kind of thing. Like this is how it was supposed to go down. And I've never had a client who has more than one kid and we didn't talk about sibling drama. And I've never heard of siblings that didn't have drama. Maybe they only had it when they were kids and they grew out of it, or, maybe it was stuff they don't really remember, but their parents do, or whatever. But like sibling dynamics, they are really prevalent. So I'm going to do my little confession here just to kind of get the ball rolling. And then I'm going to talk today about, why is it supposed to happen? Like, why is this drama and dynamics between kids so universal that it might actually be purposeful and almost like fated, like part of the natural unfolding of a child's childhood. I'm going to talk about that, and then I'm going to talk about what to do about it when your kids are having their drama, whatever that drama looks like. And I'm even going to talk about a little bit what kinds of drama there are, because it's not always rivalry. It's not even always, fighting or negative feelings towards each other. So we'll talk about all that stuff. But right now I am recording this episode in January, early January, and my eldest son, who is a sophomore in college, is home. I don't know, cast your memory back to when you were in college, but college winter breaks are real long. And this year, Elijah's college winter break is extra long because his second semester this year, instead of going back up to Fort Collins for his second half of his sophomore year, he's going to Australia for a semester abroad. And because of whatever the vicissitudes of the Australian school calendar or whatever, his school doesn't start up in Australia until late February. So he is here in our house since, December 6th or something like that until February 17th. It's a long time. And most parents, especially if your kid hasn't left yet, and maybe you're imagining what it's going to be like for your kid to be away at college or whatever, but most parents, I think, would be like so excited to have their college age kid home for that long. And I am. And I mean, Elijah and I get along great. We are like, in many ways, like practically like soulmates. And we're both Enia type ones. So we get each other really well. We have a lot of compassion for each other. And then at a certain point, our sort of unhealthy one traits take over and we start just being judgmental of each other and condescending and critical and, you know, giving unsolicited advice and like all the great things that you don't enjoy about having a one around. So, anyway, we're all on top of each other and it's been interesting having Elijah home, but way, way, way more than any, mild irritation I might occasionally feel about him being home for myself is watching the dynamics between him and his siblings. And at the same time that I've got this kiddo home who's now gotten used to being on his own and being independent and not having to live in this family full of children and parents and blah, blah, try to remember what it was like, right? After you left your parents' house and having to come back in and just it can feel stifling, right? So we've got that going on one side, and his youngest sibling is 10 years old. And if you listen to my episode on the 9-year change a few weeks back, you'll know that that means that he's kind of turning into a little punk sometimes. And ooh-wee, it is fireworks left and right between these two kids. And my confession is not that there's fireworks between the two of them. That's normal. My confession is that I have not done the best job or the caliber of job that I would like to have done at just, stepping away and allowing that to unfold between the two of them. I have definitely resorted to having these sort of long TED Talks with Elijah about his attitude towards his little brother and his understanding and awareness of child development and blah blah blah. Like I am like basically forgetting that he's just a big brother. He's not a full-fledged adult even by in any context. He's 20. He is a sophomore in college. Like if we all look back on ourselves when we were 20, maybe we thought we were grown-ups, but we were really more like proto adults. So that's true across the board for Elijah, but especially in the context of his relationship with his siblings. Like he's just a big brother. He's not some like fully self-actualized middle-aged man, for goodness sakes. And I'm forgetting all of that and sitting there and talking to him like frickin' Poindexter, like, actually the 9-year change and you are old and he is young and you should, have this awareness. And didn't you take child development last semester? And you know, just real dumb stuff that if I were my own client, I would be laughing at me. And then not really, I don't actually laugh at my clients, but, I would be, kind of helping me realize that this is a really silly way to try to handle the situation. So I'm not doing great with that. And then the same thing with Sky. Like I'm sitting there talking to him about, your brother's just trying to get a rise out of you and you need to just ignore him and turn the other cheek and blah, blah, blah. Honestly, I shouldn't be saying anything. Like I do not have a place in that relationship. And that is what we're going to talk about today. So you'll hear me come back to this later on in the episode. So, but in the meantime, I'm going to have a sip of wine. So anyone with misophonia, sorry, but here's another peek behind the curtain. I'm recording this at 7 p.m. and I'm having a little glass of wine at the end of my day. So get ready for a little sippy sounds. So let's talk about why is this sibling stuff so universal? And remember, like for me, universal equals like it's supposed to exist. There's some purpose to it. There's some redemptive quality to it. It's it's for us, not to us. This thing is happening for our kids, not to our kids. And we could even say it's happening for us as parents, not to us as parents. Okay, so why? Having a sibling is a magical gift. And there's so many reasons why. But if you just think of childhood as this like sort of getting your feet wet and trying on everything, I mean, literally every single freaking thing that you have to learn to function in the world and be a grown up, childhood is about figuring that all out. It's about trying it out. It's about practicing. It's about, exercising your, different ideas. It's, sometimes people talk about kids as little scientists running experiments, all of that stuff. It's all true. Having a sibling means you have this built-in laboratory for your entire life where you get to run experiments and you get to try all of the little things and experiment, not about like gravity, like a little baby throwing things off the end of their high chair, or not about, doing your homework and getting a good grade, or not doing your homework and not getting a good grade, but literally experiment about humanity, about society, about socializing, about relationships. Like it is such a gift to be able to mess around in that playground when you are a kid. And having a sibling gives you this unique laboratory where you get to practice everything with pretty minimal risk. Like you can extend the bounds of human decency to pretty much their breaking point and even beyond their breaking point with your sibling, and still have that sibling and have love between the two of you and grow up and go on to be, you know, perfectly reasonable adults who have a decent relationship. Like you really can't say that about pretty much any other relationship in this world. Maybe a parent-child relationship, that's great, but that's not a peer relationship, but you can't do that with your friends. You can't do that with your coworkers. You can't do that in your classroom. You can't do that with your teacher. You can't really do that anywhere except with a sibling. Like you could literally take a dump on your sibling, barf in your sibling's face, take your break all your siblings, all of their toys, tell everybody on the school bus the deepest secret about your sibling. You could do all of those things and you don't lose your sibling. You don't lose them. And that doesn't mean it's okay to do all of those things. It just means that kids have this like forgiving container inside of which they really get to experience the ramifications of really messed up behavior. And remember, I'm sure have heard me say this many times before, especially if you listen to some of the earlier podcasts where I talk about more like foundational elements. Kids learn best through experiences and modeling. You may have heard me say in the past, like kids retain, or not just kids, people retain about 80% of what they experience and only about 20% of what they hear. So telling a kid, if you don't treat this person well, that might not work out well for you. That's great. That's a verbal lesson. Maybe your kid will retain it. Probably not. I mean, statistically, just using the math that I just told you, it's more likely than not that your kid will learn absolutely nothing from you telling them that. But if they are a dick to their brother and their brother then retaliates somehow and they have that experience, that lesson is 10 times more likely to teach them something. And they really can't do that in any other situation. So this magic of having a sibling, it is a blessing for our kids. And at the same time, there are so many other beautiful gifts of having a sibling. Like I can tell you, as somebody who has aging parents and who has watched my husband go through, my husband is a bit older than I am. And so he's even further along in the aging parents department. Having a sibling as you are an adult is a real boon in so many ways, whether it's just somebody to like make sure that you're not crazy. Like okay, listen to what mom just did now, or like, you're not going to believe what dad just told me, or okay, turns out our parents have this or that issue. Like, what do we want to do about it? Like, you as a parent, if you have given your child a sibling, you have given them something that will still be here for them after you have left this earth. That's pretty amazing. And I would also say you've sort of given them a ride or die, even though we all know siblings who aren't super close or don't see each other very often and all of that stuff. Even in those situations, we see that like having a sibling means that there's somebody in this world that you're not adrift fully in the ether of adulthood. These beautiful gifts that we give our kids actually can only fully blossom if we get the fuck out of the way. And that is the hardest thing about parenting when kids are being jerks to each other, showing like so much lack of compassion and callousness towards each other, maybe even showing not just a lack of compassion, but an downright like vindictiveness or like pleasure in the other person's pain. Or, I mean, they get to try on ways of being in this world that are just appalling, right? When they are with each other. And I'll tell you a story like when I was, let's see, when my eldest was, I'll say maybe three-ish, maybe three and a half. So my oldest is 24 months or 20, sorry, 22 months older than my next kiddo. So they're really close in age and they were each other's kind of ride or die, but also each other's nemesis for a very long time. And I'd say that that's actually still true to this day. So they're 20 and 18. And yeah, I would definitely describe their relationship exactly that way to this day. Well, one day my oldest was watching some cartoons or whatever, and we were kind of letting the next one kind of sit and watch TV with him. And my husband used to do this thing where he would kind of like crawl up behind the kids and like surprise them or tickle them or, something like that. So he was like crawling behind them so they didn't hear him or see him. And he saw our oldest kid just look sort of like blase, like with like mild curiosity at the younger one. And then just, it was like he was just looking at him and being like, interesting. And then just decide to shove this kid over. And he was just like maybe a year and a half old or 2 years old or something. So he totally just like flopped over on the floor. Of course, he immediately starts crying, blah, blah, blah. And my husband was appalled. It was just like for no reason, out of the blue, the two of them are just sitting there like calm, quiet, happy, watching cartoons. And for no reason, absolutely no reason, totally unprovoked, our oldest kid just decided to be a jerk to our youngest kid. Like these ways of being that our kids experiment with are extremely upsetting. And it's so hard to believe that they will sort themselves out without us micromanaging that relationship. But remember that especially if you work with me, like the perspective, the things that I teach my clients always is relationship based parenting. And that doesn't just mean our relationship with our child, it means our children's relationships with each other. So, like in a family of four, let's say, with a mom and a dad and two kids, there are many multitudes of relationships that exist. There's a relationship between mom and kid one, mom and kid two, dad and kid one, dad and kid two, and then kid one and kid two with each other, and then mom and dad with each other, right? And so when I talk about relationships with my clients, sometimes I get a little woo woo or sort of, I don't know, metaphorical. And I love to say, let's try to imagine that there's this like beautiful, sacred, holy, golden thread between you and your kid, or between your kids, between kid one and kid two, between your two or more children, between each of them, there's this golden thread. That is their relationship. It's their connection with each other. And it's just between two people. There's no room on that thread. There's no place for a third person there. And if you could imagine, if you use my little metaphor, imagine a third person tries to like get on that thread or pull on the thread or put tension on that thread. All it can do is strain that thread. It can't strengthen it. It can make it, instead of linear, it's now complicated and has this other node to it. It could put strain and stress on it. It could even break it, let's say, but it can't help it or enhance it. So our interference with our children's dynamic with each other is really just that. It is interference. And all this magic that we're talking about of like giving our kids this container to practice in and trying all these different ways of being and develop this like strength between the two siblings and have this person be their like sort of port in a storm long term into adulthood. All of that stuff is either jeopardized, complicated, um, or slowed down by our interference. So the first thing my clients learn when we work together is to just stay out of it. If there's any possible way for you to stay out of it, just stay out of it and let the kids sort it out themselves. If you get to a place where you need to get involved, like maybe someone's safety is being threatened, or maybe there's some mental health stuff that's happening because one kid is trying on some stuff a little too hard, a little too extremely, or something like that. And everyone gets to decide what that limit is, right? When we decide that we need to intervene. But if it comes a time when the intervention is necessary, and that's your, estimation, the two more things that I'm going to tell you is number one, do not start investigating who's to blame, who's at fault. Don't play who done it. If you start, putting on your Columbo hat, you are absolutely feeding and fueling the negative dynamics between your kids. Because no matter how much sleuthing you do, you will never actually see the whole big picture. And in the meantime, you are accidentally encouraging both of them with their, sort of sibling dynamics. And the last thing I will say is that that idea that you've heard me talk about before, of supporting without solving, is never more important than in these kinds of situations. If your kiddo comes to you and is like, so and so did blah, blah, blah to me, instead of trying to litigate that, validate the emotion. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I can see you're really upset about it. And then say, what do you want to do about it? How can I support you? And let that kid, and probably half the time your kid's going to say, well, you should ground him, or you should put him in timeout, or he shouldn't be allowed to blah, blah, blah. And, then we can have a conversation where we say, like, I would love it if that person hadn't done those things, but I'm not going to actually get involved and do this for you. How can I support you in taking care of yourself? And really allow this kiddo to take advantage of the gift that they have been given. So the way that we can show up as parents in this way that I'm describing, it allows that magic of having a sibling to unfold. It allows that kid to fully experience and fully take advantage of this amazing opportunity and gift that they've been given to learn self-advocacy, to learn boundary setting, to learn, how to love somebody and still say no to them, or how to love somebody but still feel angry with them, how to take space from somebody. These are these lessons that it's like, oh my gosh, I'm learning this shit when I'm a middle-aged woman. How great would it have been if I had had somebody facilitating my learning of that stuff when I was 3 years old, for goodness sakes, right? But it only works if we are in that support role instead of the solving role. If we are able to say, this is a situation between the two of you. It sounds like you guys are really having a hard time. How do you want to handle it? How can I support you in handling it? And allow your child not to just be floundering and figuring it out for themselves, which is usually what happens when parents hear me say, oh, let's, just stay out of it as much as you can. I will hear from parents stories about like how their parents didn't help them at all when their sibling was mistreating them, or, but you don't know what I saw the other day between my kids and blah, 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 blah. But staying out of it doesn't mean that you aren't present. It just means that you're not a third party in this relationship. You are on the outsides helping your child activate and access their own ability to show up in relationships and learn new relationship skills. I hope that makes sense. I know I'm talking about it kind of on this like big picture level. And I remember I said, like, I was going to come back to my example later in the podcast. Like, you can see now how my getting involved and giving Elijah this like lecture about child development, or Sky this lecture about ignoring his big brother, like that's just all I'm doing is muddying the waters for these kids. Like, what really needs to happen is for me to just be compassionate and patient while my kids are, mucking about in their relationship with each other and screwing it up for a while. And it's really, really hard to sit on our hands and bite our tongues. There needs to be a lot of taking space. So instead of trying to fix the problem when my kids are just being idiots with each other and annoying me, I just need to leave the room. We need to take space instead of, getting involved and, trying to force them to show up in better ways or behave better. I just need to let them, behave poorly with each other and experience what happens when they do that. So even though we're talking about this at this like 30,000 foot level right now, please know that if you need if you need help helping your kids, if you are ready to like address this and get this like whatever sibling dynamics that are going on in your family on a better path, like that is something I can help you with. It's something I help my clients with all the time. And we get really specific and really detailed in how we do that when we're working together, actually live and back and forth with each other. So relationship-based parenting starts for a lot of my clients with their relationship with me and our back and forth dialogue that helps them start to look at their parenting through a new lens and tap into new skills and really access their own ability to stay calm and step away and all of that great stuff. So set up that free consultation you hear me talk about every week. Sit down and tell me everything that you're up against and what's making it hard for you and what you want it to look like. And I can't wait to hear all of that stuff from you. And we'll come up with a plan to make it better and help you walk that plan from A to B. And you get to decide if you want to do that on your own or with help and all that great stuff. A link to set that up is in the show notes. And I can't wait to talk to you again next week. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/KaplanCall, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.